Yeah, we're live. It's funny because actually these sessions you forget you're live and then you're just chatting. But yeah, sometimes technology likes to play these tricks on us, right when you least need it.
It's so funny. I bought a little prop today. Actually, I was going to show you, but this is I may as well start with it. Actually, so this comes from the amazing coach Gary Burton. He did a session with one of our guys who was struggling with stress a lot, and he's got this. It's a little snow globe, and basically it's to represent your thinking and your emotions. So when you're in a bad mood, your thinking's a bit like this. So it's all sort of, I don't know if you can see that very well.
Yeah.
All messed up, all revved up. And then the way to get out of a negative state is just to wait and just let it pass. And then it will slowly settle down. And then you get clarity. So this is cool. Reasons. This is a stressful because when the technology failed 5 minutes ago, I was like, fuck. And I was like, yeah. And then, that just represents how I was feeling internally, churned up, emotional. And then the only way out of that, you can't think your way out of a crappy mood. You've just got to wait and it will pass. And just notice that, you're a bit, you're a bit sort of, shaken up and stirred up. You don't have particular clear state of mind. So there we are. So yeah, technology can do that. And that's something I need to work on because I go from 0 to 100 from like, placid and relaxed to wanting to throw my Mac out the window.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
It's all, it's funny. It's never a problem when it's on a Saturday and you've got time to fix it. It's always before a presentation, before a Zoom call, before something like it. Just you have technology fail, and then obviously we work in digital, so people just assume that we can fix all these things. And
I always get this, just like, oh, you can tune the car radio. You're in web. It's like you have no clue. That's like a totally different discipline.
Yeah, you get that. But with generally speaking, older relatives are just saying like, "Oh, can you fix my, my Mac or my Macs?" I don't mind because I'm a Mac person, but if it's PC, you may as well just not bother. It's ridiculous. But anyway, man, how are you?
Yeah, to be fair, really good, thank you. I was really looking forward to today's session. It's been a mental few weeks, but so much to update you on, and it's been really exciting. We've just done some. I don't know if you saw the event we ran last week with Shopify and Pinterest. That was hugely exciting, and to have the head of Shopify, Amir, and then the head of Pinterest, Amir, was just awesome to share the stage with those people, and just so much knowledge and insight. That was great. The marketing plan's really taking good shape, and we're getting some good content out there. We've got some new white papers launched. Really pleased with that. I mean, the proposition to focus just on Shopify has been a really positive one, but it takes time to implement because you still get inquiries for other like maybe a WordPress WooCommerce, maybe a dashboard, maybe a something else. And so it's really about just taking time to eventually just go down one route. But actually, as long as it's in the e-commerce ecosystem, then that's what really matters. And so that's been quite exciting to just be a little bit firmer with the leads that are coming in. The pipeline's looking good. I'm feeling really buoyed. I mean, the biggest change we've had is just the team in the last 6 to 8 weeks. Has been some new hires. There's been a new senior leadership team created, and also had a chat with Rebecca, which was hugely helpful with that. So thank you. I've just been allowed to. Last week was weird. I actually texted you tonight about white space and what the hell to do with it, because I was starting to panic, because after so many years of moaning I don't have any white space, I got this white space, and I started feeling like I wasn't working hard enough. I was just like, what the hell do I do with all this time? I didn't know what to do, and I feel guilty because just because I've got white space, it doesn't mean my other two co-founders do have white space. And so for me to, just because my best ideas might come out on the golf course, it felt fairly insensitive to just go and start whacking a ball around and kind of thinking more strategically. And while that's where we've got to get to, it almost felt like everyone needed to be at that stage. And I guess that's my first question for you this morning is there's obviously 4 of you at Fountain. At what point did you just do one at a time getting to that position, or did you have to get it so all of you could do it at once to make it feel fair?
Yeah, the truth is it's never going to be equal, and different people work in different ways. So it's difficult because obviously I'm similar to you in as much as that I come up with lots of ideas, and a lot of them aren't very good, but a few tend to be good, and occasionally one's very good. So I need space for that. And then you've got Laura, who's a very different personality type, and she's working on, her executive responsibilities are the operations side of things, which, whilst there is a sort of more open sort of strategic part of ops, there's also a lot of day-to-day interaction stuff, so you get pulled in more, which is difficult. But I think it's just making sure everyone's doing what they're naturally good at, and it works for them and their personality type. So it can't be a sort of, well, we're all going to work 6 hours a day and that's it. It just can't. It needs to be about just understanding that everyone's different. And the thing, obviously, we say it with the benefit of hindsight, but at the time there was frustrations that perhaps when I was taking time out to network and to think, it looked like I wasn't in the business. And my response to that was, I create impact, not, you judge me by impact, not hours. Because you judge me by hours, it doesn't work, because also I never really switch off from Fountain. I'm reading books all the time. I'm thinking when I'm going for a walk on a Sunday or whatever. I was thinking yesterday when I went for a walk. So it's not like, we need to get out this industrial era thinking of like, clock in at 5. We clock in at 5, clock in at 9, clock out at 5. Yeah. We work from 5 to 9 normally, but no, it went, and the way it worked out was just, the environment forced different people out at different times, due to me with long COVID, or Rob and Laura were feeling a bit stressed. And strange enough, we planned for Rebecca to sort of take more of a step back. And then in the last year, she's done a lot more than the three of us, and we're trying to rebalance that. I think I said to you last time, the big realization we had is that when all founders were making all of the key decisions together, we're all having the same level of stress. So we're all getting stressed. We're all having the sleepless nights. Whereas now we've actually, and this is Gary Mansell's doing, we've compartmentalized it into exec responsibilities. So if there's a sales problem, then that's Rob's thing to think about. And if there is, or when there is, I'll come in and be a sounding board to Rob, of course. But I'm in charge of the marketing and the networking and the thought leadership, and also strategy and client retention. There's areas that I need to go deep into. So, and I think the thing about the white space is, mate, it's so common, because I had exactly the same thing. I've met founders who have exited and just felt lost, or close to exiting. And actually, I think we've just created really bad habits, because when we started up in business, we had to do everything, right? We were the creators, and we never truly grew out of that. It was the Phil Easter's thing that he said, like, you've only got 2 jobs really. You need to grow up, Marcus. You've got 2 jobs in business. 1, you need to see what the business needs, and 2, you need to find out who's going to do it, because it's not going to be bloody you. And actually, I think I'm getting there. And I've always got a book recommendation, as you know, Mr. Lomax.
Yeah,
and this one has snuck into the top 5. I think you'll love this. This one is amazing.
The Road Less Stupid.
Advice from the chairman of the board. This guy's a fucking player. 45 years of being a chairman. And I'll give it to you in a nutshell what he says. So the way to avoid being stupid is to take your time and seriously think. It's what Warren Buffett does. It's what Charlie Munger does. What Bill Gates does. Actually, any serious entrepreneur, all you're doing basically, mate, is you're making a series of decisions. And if you make hurried, emotional, rushed decisions, a lot of them will turn out badly. And your success is basically the accumulation of whether you make good or bad decisions. And of course, there's elements of luck, and there's things you won't know in it. So a lot of what I'm focusing at the minute is on making correct decisions. And every key decision maker, there's another one here called How to Decide Better by Annie Duke, the poker player. All of them are saying you need to take time, you need to weigh up, and you need to actually have serious time for thinking to overcome cognitive biases, emotions. You need to do effective research. And it's really nice, because actually your core problem is, I've got white space. And the golf course is a good place to play around with stuff. But also what Keith Cunningham recommends is just sitting down. And I did this a couple of weeks ago. We had a problem and it blew up at the board meeting. There was Spencer and Pete and Rebecca and Alice, everyone was shouting. And I wasn't really around, because I was feeling a bit COVID-y. So I kind of just went to a room, put on some music, got a pen and paper, and just sat and thought about it. And I came back with a couple of insights which we're actually implementing. And it made me realize, it's not saying that there isn't any value to Spencer and Pete. There's tons of value and having discussion. But I think in our society, we've massively skewed it among work is lots of people talking quickly and trying to get their points. And there's all these layers of, personal interactions and frustrations and history and emotional baggage. And we're reacting from a more primitive part of the brain. Whereas actually slowing down and using the white space to seriously ask good questions, that's what will make the difference. That will give you the breakthroughs and allow you to make the right decisions. And we did this a bit when we network. Obviously, we network and we ask questions and we have interesting discussions, but nothing beats having that. And I'll prove it to you because he has a really good exercise which blew me away. So I'm going to do this exercise with you, Mr. Lomax, if you're up for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you have to, perhaps don't say them out loud, but think of like, if you could change if you go back in time and change 3 big business mistakes that you made, how much more money would you have now? Would you have more, less, or the same?
Yeah, more.
Right. Now, the next question is, how were you feeling just before you made those decisions? Were you feeling confident, excited?
At the time, it felt like it was right for the business. I mean, I don't even mind sharing one of them. It was around hiring, and we just hired what we could do. And so we hired what the business could sustain and what we could afford and who we thought was best. And actually now looking back at it, since we've hired some more people recently and certain members of the team have stepped up considerably. And you start to think, Christ, we just invested more in our people from, I mean, it's a bit cliche to almost say, oh, you're only as good as your people. And I actually do believe that. But I think, just if we had focused more on getting the right people as opposed to rushing hiring decisions, we could be much further forwards.
Here's the point he makes, though. So did your gut instinct at the time tell you that, these are the right hires?
At the time, I guess they would have. I guess we probably didn't really look at listen too much to the guy. I just was like, okay, we've got a problem because our decision we had to make probably quickly because we were trying to hire to solve a problem or fix a gap or whatever. I guess we just made that hire and then got them into the running as quickly as possible. And then was like, okay, this is either the right decision or the wrong decision. But we didn't have too much time to think about all the knock-on effects or consequences that could happen.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So the thing that came up for me is like, oh shit, my gut instinct isn't that good. Like it's like, we're entrepreneurs. We got gut instinct because our gut instinct will give you stomach ache. Like it's kind of true. Like, and you said it just there at the end. You said we rushed and we didn't think through the decision. So here's the beautiful thing of your white space now. These gut instinct decisions are going to happen. You're going to go, yeah, this feels like the right thing to do. But now you've got the white space, you can say, well, let's just give it a day. Let's actually sit there and let's weigh up the pros and cons. I might give Marcus a call. I might give Spencer a call. I might give Gary a call and just run it by. And that's the difference. That's the only difference between people that make good decisions and make bad decisions. There are mental models, right? So the ones that he talks about and similar to ones I use as well is, what's the upside? And he puts in brackets, you're an expert at this because I always know the upside of an idea I like. I'm like,
always an optimist. Yeah.
This time next year, Rodney. This time next year. And then you go, what's the downside? And you go, well, I guess, and you kind of downplay the downside. And then the questions are, is it a reversible decision? Which is good because if it's a reversible decision, it's kind of a free hit, right? It's kind of like, well, let's just roll the dice. Probation is, employment to an extent is a reversible decision. But the thing that is really powerful is if it's not a reversible decision, and then the final question is, can you live with that downside? Because there's been a few decisions in the last week where it's like, it's, here's the upside, here's the downside. Can I live with the downside? No way. Well, then okay, then I'm not going to do that. Yeah. And 5 minutes ago I was going to, and I had conviction bias, I had confirmation bias, I had all the emotions in my brain, all the dopamine going, yeah, this is a good decision. But those things always fire. Whether the outcome is good or not, or whether the decision-making process is good or not. So it just allows you not to trust your instincts as much as perhaps you should, because you've said it yourself. And this guy's gone from being bankrupt to being a multimillionaire and now sat on the board of multiple businesses. And it's the same thing that what made the difference. And Dalio talks about it, and Warren Buffett, and all these people is sitting and reading and thinking and talking and making sure that. But you can't do that until you run your business rather than your business running you. And that's something for you to celebrate because you're at a stage now where you're running the business because you've got white space. When you had no white space, the business was running you, it owned you, It was just dictating to you, and you looked tired and miserable, and now you look light and happy. And
a little less tired and miserable.
Yeah. So how does that all land for you, mate? What are you thinking?
Yeah, no, I think I guess the challenge that I'll come back to you at is what do you do around too many cooks? Because this is a situation we've had before, where
Right.
actually you're right, we want to talk about it, we want to wear it. Sometimes we talk about it with the wrong people, but
Mhm.
sometimes I speak to you about, let's take a hiring or a real life example. Let's say we're talking about making some introductions to the Quickfire package in terms
Yeah.
of changing it about. Great, we think that's what we're going to do. We are in fact doing that. That's really exciting. I talk to you about how we're going to execute that. You tell me one thing. I then go to Gary and ask him. He tells me something different. I go to Paul. I go to Spencer. Whoever. I go to all these people, and I
Mhm.
get lots of different inputs. How do you then decide on? Do you have different horses for different courses to say, you know what, if it's
Yeah.
HR related, I'm going to go to this person and this person only, and if it's like finance related, I'll go to that person, etc.
Yeah, I think the thing is as well, you've just got to let go of it with getting it right all the time, because you can't, because there's so much you don't know. I think that's the thing. Like, and for me, it's not about whether the outcome's good or not. That's a big part of it. But it's when I look back, I don't know if you ever play much poker, but like, you can go in on a hand where you've got a 95% chance of winning and you still lose. We should have gone in on that, because 95% of the time you're going to win. So I think as long as your decision-making process has been thorough, you have to understand we live in a random universe where there's luck, and there's so many things you don't know. So never beat yourself up if you get advice and you go with mine over Gary's, and you should have gone with Gary's, because you go, well, Marcus has actually run an agency and has done this particular thing 10 times, and actually you and I can look at the data and unpack it and go, I think actually 9 times out of 10 it would have worked out okay, so it's all right. So I think it is, but I think the truth is, mate, that's where actually when you do have space, because you know your business better than anyone else. So that's the thing. The advisors are giving advice. Your job is to kind of just it's just data that you put in, and it's an incomplete puzzle. But the truth is, I mean, when I studied coaching, what a good coach should do is, let the people, never tell someone what to do, let them figure it out themselves.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's part of it. There's that Nancy Klein says, like, when she's coaching people, she asks the question, like, how much further can they go in their own thinking before they need any of mine? And often they can go very, very far. So the truth is, I think you've got enough. That's the thing. I talk about all these books, but they're just mental models to help you figure it out yourself. So hopefully that helps. Like, I think, yeah, it's giving space, it's weighing up the best evidence possible, but realizing there's always going to be incomplete, because when we're thinking about stuff, the map's not the territory and the universe is random. But you know what? You only need to win 51% times out of 49, and you get chucked out of every casino in Vegas, right? You need to tilt the odds in your favor occasionally, and or the whole time, but not massively. And
Yeah.
you're going to keep winning, which is why you're sitting there now smiling, because you are very good at decision making. But I think you can be even better, and we all can, by using the white space well. And you'll know what's right for you for the white space, whether it is the golf course, the walk, or whatever. And I'm sure Fred and Martin, when they see what you come back with, they won't mind that you've been off the grid a little bit. Like when I come back with, here's some ideas to solve our biggest problems, I don't think Alice or people are going to be like, well, I haven't heard from Marcus for 2 days. What's he been doing? He's been going for walks and listening to music and reading books. And I'm adding value. And if it is, and if what sometimes what I add doesn't work, but more often than not, it has worked out okay, because because we're here now, right? Then they're quite happy to accept that, yeah, Marcus adds impact, not hours. And that's kind of where you're getting to as a business owner and as a board member. You add impact, because if all you can do is add more and more hours, you're going to burn out, and you're also going to become, you're a manager. You're not really a business owner.
What would happen if one of the other board members, I was thinking about this the other day, let's say, Martin decided he wanted to add impact, not hours, or Fred wanted to, or in your case, Rob,
Yeah.
Laura, or even Rebecca wanted to do those things. I guess it's difficult, right? Because for yourself, you can justify and you know that that's going to be the right decision. But for the others, again, what I find is when I've got free time, I start thinking. When I start thinking about other areas of the business, not just my areas or the areas that
Yeah.
I'm responsible for. And so in your case as well, you'll be thinking, okay, I think we should do this in sales. And actually, it might not be your kind of swim lane to even, yeah, you can have thoughts, of course, and bring them to the table, but it's not your area. I guess, how do we make sure that we don't tread on toes and stamp on things and devalue others by having all this white space to keep coming up with all these ideas? Because it could unsettle some character types that perhaps don't like change and like to feel in control.
Yeah, I mean, give me specifics, mate. Because I think in my business, I've tread on lots of toes. So if anyone
Yeah.
watching this, well, we know about this. But no, I think for example,
Yeah, I guess from our example, it would be okay.
yeah,
Let's say I take some time out and I'm thinking about things, and okay, let's say the pipeline's healthy, great. That's my side of the business. Clients are in good health, that's great. Okay, I start thinking that we should do something different with cash flow forecasting, or I listen to a book and they come up with this new idea around revenue tracking, or I speak to Spencer and Pete and they give me some new model to use, and suddenly I introduce this new thing to the business, but it has no direct like role change to me because it's not something I'm doing, but suddenly I just add another task to somebody else. I guess it's how you go about that, and I guess it's really the strength is in presenting it to the person and getting them to buy into it. Because like this morning, I had a really good cactus session a few weeks back, and we were talking about marketing plans and marketing reporting, and we've got the most wonderful marketing manager you might have seen on LinkedIn. She won an award last week and she's doing really well, and that's really exciting. But all of a sudden I'm like, I said, right, okay, I've been speaking to Spencer and Pete. We've got a new reporting template. And she's like, well, what's wrong with the last reporting template I've been using for 6 months? And I'm like, well, I don't want that one anymore. I want this one. And it's like, well, for her, just because I've gone and researched and found it, I've now come back with something else. And now she's got to put in more work to get that template up to date and everything else. And I just think, yeah, I guess there's a danger of bringing too much in and rushing people just because I'm ready for change. They might not be ready for change.
Yeah, I mean, you answered your own question by saying to sell it in. I mean, if you'd use some white space to plan how you approach Nemo to sell it in, would you have done it any differently?
Yeah, I think at the time I just kind of was maybe rattling through a little bit fast in the meeting and just said, yeah, okay, like here's a new template, let's do it, as opposed to maybe asking some questions around what do we think of the marketing template, how could it improve it, and then I think you're right there. I could have just badged it up in a slightly different way that made them realize the problem with the existing thing, as opposed to just saying we're going to do a new one before diving into what was wrong with the one in the first place. Um, yeah, that's why it's nice talking, mate, because you sometimes solve your own problems. You're like, oh, I should have done that.
The truth is, I mean, look, it's you've made it. I'm going to say this, you've made it, mate. You've got everything you need inside of you. You just need to slow down so you can find it. Like you're done. You've made it, Lathan. You've got, I met you at 19, I think. So, and you had it inside of you anyway. You just hadn't manifested it on the outside. But now you've learned a lot on the way as well. So you've got it. You've got the internal resources, and the books, they would have served a reminder just to take some time to look inside, and you can answer your question. There are insights that sort of help remind you of stuff. Like there's where I wrote this down. Here we go. I read this morning. Unfortunately, growth and control work inversely. The more growth you desire, the less control you have, and vice versa. So this is what I'm working on: is we've got to let the fuck go. We've got to let Nemo have her own spreadsheet. And I laugh because we have the same thing with Spencer and Pete. They want their one, which I think their one is more elegant, but our team wanted stuff that they wanted to report on as well, and they've put together a sort of a hybrid, which Spencer and Pete don't like. And but I've had to let go. It's good enough, and I just think every minute I spend trying to push that one, even though it irritates me a little bit, is a minute I'm not spending on something that could add exponential value, right? Because there's thinking and decisions that will get like ×1, and some will get ×10, and some will get ×100 and ×1,000. So I need to perhaps be asking myself, what am I not seeing right now? Where can I use my thinking on something that will get ×1,000 ROI rather than a spreadsheet problem? But
when you've got white space, how do you prioritize the things that the business need versus the things you think the business needs, and that kind of unconscious bias? Because I think whenever I have spare time, I'm always thinking, how do I define the proposition a bit clearer? How do I bring in more sales? How do I increase average order value? How do I do this or do that? And I'm always thinking on the bits that I'm comfortable with, but very rarely am I thinking, what can I do around governance to improve the business? Or what can I do around our contract to change it? Or what can I do about this and that? Or stuff that maybe I'm not so comfortable with or I don't enjoy as much.
Yeah. Why do you want to do stuff you don't enjoy?
Well, I guess it's just the things that I'm tweaking perhaps don't need tweaking because they're in good space. So let's say that everything's got a number and the areas that I'm looking at are maybe 6 out of 10. But there's other areas of the business that are 4 out of 10. But because I don't enjoy them, I don't give them time or necessarily the same amount of time to think about them. I just think, oh, that's a problem. Yeah, I'll only address it when it's on fire. Whereas actually all my time is spent, oh, okay, how can I prospect a little bit differently? How can we now start doing video prospecting as opposed to email prospecting? What can we do around this? And just the stuff that gets me going is the stuff I seem to focus my time on, but it's not always right for the business in terms of scaling it efficiently and effectively.
But should you be doing the stuff you don't enjoy and you're not naturally good at?
No, I guess not. I guess I could take the challenge and relay it back to that department to say there's a challenge here. What do we think? How do we think we'll solve it? Again, I guess it's a challenge because some people won't have like I said at the start of this, they won't have the white space to be able to think about the challenge. So to them, it will just be another plate on top of all the other plates that they're spinning. And that might not be right for them right now, despite it being right for the business. And I guess the other thing to do is, if we spot it and if they're overworked, is then to go to market to find a consultant. I was chatting to Rob about this the other day around finding people that can just do and solve as opposed to people that can suggest. So, okay, yeah, there's a problem with HR as an example, rather than coming up with loads of ways we can improve it, just get an HR person in to solve the problem. And then kind of step back and go back to what you were doing.
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, so here's the thing. If I get what you're saying, and I've had that as well. There are areas where I'm like, shit, what if this happens? And, like, in areas that aren't naturally fun for me. I think you and I are quite similar to governance, etc. But then the challenge isn't how do I do it or how do I push it up my priority. It's a case of, like you say, who else is going to do it, and how do I it's not just like who's going to do it, but it's how do I get the outcome with minimal impact from me and minimal negative impact on other people, right? So and it could just be, okay, it's an item on the agenda at the board meeting. The action is someone, not you, someone who's interested in governance finds or HR finds a HR consultant. I think be careful what I'm trying to protect you from is you've got white space, and it sounds like you're trying to make more work and get back into the business. And I'm trying to keep you out of the business with Lomax, because if you go back in, what I'm trying to avoid is, and I don't think it will happen, but there is a possibility that in a few months' time we see a rather haggard Lomax who's got no white space in his diary, who's not enjoying, who feels he's lost his mojo and his back-to-back meetings, and it's all. I hope that doesn't happen. So I'm smiling because I've made these mistakes. It's not because I'm like, I know more than you. It's I've fucked up so many times that I can see it so clearly. So just stick with what brings you alive. And the thing, going back to your thing of one's a 4 out of 10 and one's a 6. Well, one, then probably not equal. As sales is much more important than governance. It's the lifeline. And if it's a 6, why is it not a 10, mate? Like, get on with it.
I was just being modest, right? I actually think it's 11, but I just don't want to say anything.
Look, if you've got 100% closure rate and all of it, then
there's always area for improvement.
Celebrate, you've reached the top of the mountain, mate. But you know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I get it. I think also just on the topic of going back into the business, it's funny when sometimes it's so hard to let go, and we just got another account director, and so there's now 2 ladies running the client services team. And again, sometimes you just get in the way, and it's such a weird feeling. We're like, oh, do you want me to pick this up? And they're like, no, I'll just do it. And you're like, oh, okay, this is odd. Why can't I help? Can I help them? They're like, no, it's under control. I was like, oh God, I don't know how I feel about this. This is so weird. It's like someone with your baby, just like, do you want me to feed it? No, it's been fed. Do you want someone to put it to sleep? No, it's been just asleep. I'm just like, what am I meant to do? I'm just here as a spare part. But it's nice. It's now just getting across that mindset of, starting to think a little bit more strategically, have more meaningful conversation. You'll be pleased with this. Actually, the other day, I actually had a white space morning, and I just decided to call someone that always have to book in with them like 6 weeks in advance. And I just chatted to her for like an hour, and it was so nice. I just said, hey, what are you doing this morning? And she was like, yeah, I'm free. I was like, let's chat. And that's where we've got to get to, is where we can be a little bit more spontaneous with our ability to reach out for advice and support, as opposed to having to diarize it and be so regimented.
Yeah, like, spontaneous, like, it's regimented fun's not the best fun, let's be honest. Like, now we shall have fun. Now we shall have an enjoyable moment. The thing that comes to mind when you said that baby analogy, I think a better analogy isn't that someone else is looking after the baby. It's that your baby's growing up and it can feed itself now and it can dress itself. And you need to
Yeah.
stop being overprotective and smothering. You need to let your child go and grow up and go and be wonderful in the world. And I think that's it. But it goes back to the thing that Keith Cunningham says. That's the price of growth. We can't grow our businesses and still control them so much, because if we do, we'll stifle growth and we'll make ourselves
Let's
unhealthy.
say with a baby analogy though. Okay, so now this one is going to school and it's looking after itself and it's brushing its teeth and that's all really exciting. But
Yeah.
now I want another baby, mate. I'm I'm now at a point where I'm just like, okay, well I miss like looking after this baby and now I want another one. So what happens now? How do you overcome that itch of, okay, now I'm doing a bit of mentoring and I'm really enjoying that, and I'm kind of, it's not quite execing it's a similar role, but at the same time it's not a commercial piece. It's just because I enjoy giving
Yeah.
back and I like it. But yeah, I guess that's something else I've got to be careful of, as I don't suddenly become a childminder for like 30 other babies and actually forget my own child is still in its infancy and needs support.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that don't have children that are happy, mate. So you can really relax a bit. But no, here's the thing that came up for me. I don't know if this is useful for you, but you really lit up. You're quite luminous today. You're looking great. But when you talked about your spontaneous morning, we just called someone, had a really lovely, non-pressured, non-diarized chat. You look really happy, and I just wondered. The thing that came up for me was, I wonder if every day, if it was like that for Nathan, how much happier would he be? And it's just a wondering, right? Obviously, you can't have complete, chaos and no diary, but you know what I'm getting at. Just
Sure.
everything's a bit looser, less time pressured, less structured, more spontaneous, more free flowing, where you can naturally be your best self, and then just trust that if every day is like that, future Nathan will figure out, now it's time to have another baby at some point in the future, or now it's time, I'm really well up for setting up a nursery and doing some child minding, or something Nigel Cushion does. I don't know what you call that, a nursery.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I'm going with this, right? But you've got a lot of time ahead of you, and I think just don't rush it, mate. Enjoy the journey. Just enjoy every day.
I guess that's a big thing, right? Is patience, and that's another thing with white space. You begin to, chase the next win or the next thing, and I guess the next thing for us is to start building out the sales function. When I say it's in good health, it is in terms of the pipeline, but it's still I'm involved a lot in it, and I guess the challenge is now to create something where I'm not involved so much in it, so more leads are coming to the business without my involvement. And to get to that is going to be a really exciting journey, but one that needs some serious headspace to think about how we're going to do that.
Yeah. So it sounds like you've got it all teed up perfectly, right? You've got the space.
Yeah, I think so. I think now the thing is as well is, and that's something I've found in growing the business, is when you've got different people involved and different shareholders and everything else, your priorities are going to be different to theirs. So I would like to grow the sales team because that fixes my problem and gives me more white space and everything else. But actually, for Martin, he might have his biggest challenge might not be sales. Actually, he just wants some ops support, or Fred might want some strategic support, whatever it may be. So it's just, again, trying to remove that emotional unconscious bias. Is actually, just because Nathan wants this right now, it doesn't mean the business needs this right now. That might be priority 3 for the business, but just priority 1 for me. And I guess it's just being able to have that thought process without thinking that your most important thing is always number 1 on the business's agenda.
Absolutely. And I think that's where non-execs are just invaluable, because they're not going to play favorites, right? They're not in your head. So they're completely objective and say, I'm looking at this business externally, and actually, no, you're right, Nathan. Fred needs some support, then Martin, and then you. So, and then that's how it goes, because and you can and Spence, Pete, and whoever else you've been working with, they'll be able to offer good advice, and then just follow it. And I think the funny thing is, I've noticed with my co-founders, the more I try and help them get more white space, the more they kind of want me to as well. So it's rather than being a race to the bottom of I want lots of resource so I can have more space and have less sort of stressful sort of reactive moments. You try and help them, they'll help you, and it becomes a sort of positive virtuous cycle rather than a sort of vicious cycle of everyone protecting themselves. But yeah, that's where non-execs are important, because even though I said you're in the business, you know it best. When I think it comes to something like that, you need someone who isn't the 3 of you to look at it, because you're too in it. You can't see, mate.
I think so. And also the different people have different abilities to let go and to delegate and all that good stuff. And so we just need to make sure that we give that person all the relevant tools and abilities to do it without causing stress. Because of course for some people it's a hugely stressful exercise, letting go and delegating and building a team and all that, and for some people it's not as stressful. So I guess it's just about making sure we do. And that's one thing I'm learning. Actually, I've kind of become a line manager to a couple of people, and I haven't been a line manager in a few years within Quickfire, and so it's weird to have people. I'd Nemo for sure in the marketing team, but actually some of the client services team, it's been really nice to be able to help them, but at the same time it's been weird because you go back into that mindset of just trying to solve everyone's problems and taking the monkeys on your back, as opposed to just being like, okay, and how do you think you should solve it? Multipliers indeed.
Yeah, mate. It's yeah. I mean, these are the tough skills we've all got to learn, right? But it's it. That's it. Your job is to help them be the best versions they can be, so they solve the problems, not you. Your leader's job is putting others on the stage. It's tough because you might see the answers and they bloody well can't, and it's something that I struggle with a lot personally. But it's got to be the way to go, because if you can't grow the 2 people or 3 people you're line managing, you can't grow that team if you're solving all their problems, and they can't grow as people. So it's just you're then in stasis, which is anti what you're trying to achieve, which is growth.
I guess the next challenge is then around, we talked about essentialism last time, and trying to make if I wasn't 90% sure about something, I just wouldn't do it. And weirdly, after reading the first few chapters, I just took to my email and took to a couple of I was really fortunate to have been invited as a chair on an agency committee and involved in some other things, and I just emailed all these people and just said, you know what, I'm just going to step back from this because I wasn't finding enjoyment from it, and it just wasn't right for me right now. And so I've stepped back. And again, I guess what I'm trying to say is these lessons we're learning in business, we need to take into our personal life as well, because just last Tuesday, I was like, oh, I've got an opportunity to play 6 games of football, 3 on Monday, 3 on Tuesday. Okay, I'm going to say yes to every single one. And I end up playing. And actually, weirdly enough, come game 11 or something on the Tuesday night, not only was I knackered, but I just didn't want to be there. It was pouring with rain. And I was like, this sucks. Like, why did I agree to do this? And so, this week I've said no to football tomorrow. I'm just going to have one game tonight at 9 o'clock and actually just enjoy that moment. I think that's actually a character trait which I'm slowly working out of, is just everything to excess. And Nikki spots as well, even things like the shopping. And I'll always get 2 bags of ice, not 1. And I'll always just do everything over the top. And so actually, with the personal life, I need to be really protective of that as well. And again, we're seeing friends, everyone's like, oh, can you do something next Thursday? Or can we go for a walk? Or can we do this? Can we do that? And we can, but it's really important that we don't just say yes to everything and then end up having no time for myself or with Nikki or with the kids or whatever.
Yeah, and it's so hard, because I think you and I are similar to that one of our sort of superpowers and what people tend to feedback they like about us is we go above and beyond. We have a meaningful conversation, we'll buy someone a book, or we'll do something a bit extra, which is amazing, because it's so nice to surprise and delight people in the world, don't get me wrong. But if you do that with every person you interact with, and if you say yes to every opportunity, then you're miserable, which then actually diminishes that flame in you that makes you so great anyway. So it's a hard thing to learn. I think the trouble is that as we get older and more experienced, we have to change our habits as well. Because when you and I first started in business, no one knew who we were. So us actually saying yes to every opportunity got us to where we are today.
Yeah.
But I kind of feel like, and on my personal life as well, I kind of joked with Rebecca, said, we've got too many friends. I've got enough fucking friends. Like, I don't need any more friends. There's a critical number. Like, once you got like 1,500 people that you know on Facebook, there's a lot of people that can bug me and sort of ask me how I'm doing and stuff. Like, don't get me wrong, I've got lots of, I love a lot of them. But if I have extra on top, the quality of my presence with each individual person diminishes, and then that relationship diminishes. And I'd rather, the whole thing of essentialism is it's the disciplined pursuit of less, right? It's doing less better. I did actually get all these props ready beforehand, mate.
Yeah, I was going to say, have you got like a desk of books or something?
No, I brought them up, so I knew that we would be referring to them. That's my preparation, which is quite effortless, really, because I just pick off some books on the shelf. But you see what I'm saying, mate? It's a disciplined pursuit of less, and I'm really glad you've tested it and it worked, because it may not have done. You may have read Essentialism, cancelled some stuff, and then thought, oh, I really wanted to do that and I feel guilty and all the rest of it. But you look better, you sound happier, you've got white space. So the feedback from the advice you're testing seems to be, that's the way to go.
So far so good, I guess. I think it's easy to slip back into bad habits, and just because you've read a book or heard some advice, you kind of implement it, and then you go back into that pre-built mode, robotic mode that you've developed for however many years, or that pattern of, okay, now I've got white space, let's quickly fill it. And I found myself actually doing that this morning. I thought of you just before our call, and I was looking at my diary thinking, oh, I've got 15-minute slot there. I tell you what, I'll put that in, and it has to be in the diary. And I was like, you know what, it doesn't need to be in the diary. I'm going to make myself a cup of tea, and I'm going to stretch the legs, and I'm going to let the dog out and just do whatever I need to do at that time. And yeah, nothing is so critical that it can't wait 10, 15 minutes. And I think that's the big learnings over the last few months, is just about how during COVID, everything was a million mile an hour because there was so much uncertainty. But now we're coming out of that. It's just having a little bit more faith in the system that we've created. And yeah, you know what? Like, life is good. And it's important we recognize that and celebrate that, as opposed to chasing the next win all the time. And that's something I'm incredibly guilty of. Is, yeah, it's all good, but what about the next big buzz, or where am I going to get? It's addictive, right? So, I don't want to say, yeah, maybe it is. Maybe success is addictive. And I don't mean to sound big headed by saying that, because we're by no means hit the success levels that we want. But at the same time, small little flavors of success gives you that adrenaline to, okay, I'm now going to go and hunt the next one. And then you start just falsely hunting it when you don't give enough time to reflect on the success you've just had.
But it's the success little, like the buzz you get. It's the same as when you eat like a donut or something. You know what I mean? There's a sugar high. It's, or you know, it's or a cup of coffee. It's you know, it's just a chemical blast of dopamine and serotonin, which is great. But if you're always chasing that high, you know, you'll need bigger ones, and then there's collateral damage. And I mean, the Greeks had, I think, 4 different words for happiness. So we only have 1, but they had 4 for different types. So you can categorize it into different, and there's sort of that sort of pleasure that you get from success, but that shouldn't be like confused with fulfillment and feeling just happy to be alive in the moment. Like that's what they define as sort of mental health, right? An innate mental health, when you just go for a walk on a sunny day, you know, holding Nikki's hand or whatever with the dog, and you know the kids are laughing, like you just feel a warm sense of contentment. Your mind isn't busy. It's that sort of clarity of just feeling relaxed and not too stressed. So, and that, funnily enough, is actually where you get your best insights and ideas, and that's sustainable sort of happiness. And don't get me wrong, like the spikes of getting, you know, buying like new things. I bought a really expensive speaker last week and I fucking love it, but now my ears hurt because I've been listening to too much like high frequency music. So I mean, exactly the same mistake of following the buzz, like, you know, it's a little fucking addict. But you know, I've said, right, that's it, I'm not listening to any music 2 days. I've overdone it. I'm just going to relax and enjoy the garden and, you know, sunshine, and chatting to you and reading books and thinking about business challenges, but from a place of, this is a really cool thing to try and figure out, rather than, if I don't get this right, it's going to shit and I'm going to be on the street bankrupt, and like all the sort of weird, you know, sort of fear.
Do you still get those self-doubts? I mean, I've got a session like this with Lu Chi in a few weeks, and we're talking about the different versions of Nathan. And yeah, actually, one thing I guess I was most worried about when we went for this white space pursuit is that actually white space gives you more time for negative thoughts, whereas actually if you're so busy, you rarely have chance to think about all the nasty things that could happen. But now with white space, you have time for them to manifest. Do you still get those negative thoughts?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's so I think I mentioned my mum's a CBT therapist, and her thing is that, look, we evolved to survive, not to be happy, right? So there's 2 things, like we evolved to be happy and just have nice lives. The most important thing in the brain is the survival mechanism. So, you know, it's no coincidence that all of us are neurotic warriors who are anxious a lot, because the ancestors who were kind of happy-go-lucky, just walking around, like, I'm sure there won't be a saber-toothed tiger around the next bush or whatever, got attacked and didn't reproduce. So the ones that were like disproportionately worried, it's called the negativity bias. You know, you can have a really good day of, like, you know, people giving you compliments, and then at the end, or even at the beginning, say someone says something which is a negative statement about you, that plays on your mind again and again. And we all get that. But the trick is just to, 1, recognize that it's just feeling your thinking. And 2 is just to not take it seriously. Like I had that this morning. What was I worrying about? Something ridiculous. Oh, yeah, because my ears were hurting because of the speakers. I was like, what if my ears never get better? And I just laughed and said, yeah, okay. Thank you, brain, for the dumb comment of the day. Like, of course they'll feel better. Like every time I've got injured, my body heals itself. But it's it's funny. There's a guy, what's his name? He wrote Solve for Happy. He was a Google engineer. And the way he compares it, which will work really well for people like me and you who work in business, like white collar business, is like when your brain gives you a suggestion which isn't helpful. It's like when you've got an employee or a team member or like a team that have come up with an idea for your business which is really off the mark, and you're politely saying that's a really interesting idea, but I don't think that's correct, so maybe go back and have another go. Just do that with your brain. You're like, I don't think I'm gonna have like hearing problems because I just listen to loud music for one weekend. I did enough clubbing in my teens to know that my ears can handle it. And like, I don't think I'm going to be bankrupt tomorrow because we lost a pitch, or even that comes into mind. Like, if it's just a warning thing, and you just got to recognize that we didn't evolve to handle, like they say, if you took a child from 50,000 years ago and dropped them into our society now from a baby, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. So the hardware we've got is the same as what we've had for the last 50,000 years, and we just can't really handle this amount of information. It's fucking ridiculous, and we're just trying our best, but our minds that were set up for dealing with saber-toothed tigers and snakes, having to deal with trolls on Twitter and business, like all these difficult, complex ways that we set up our society, and we worry a lot. But the only way out of it, like it's always been for all of us, I mean, you said it yourself before, is how did you solve when you were worried and stressed? Well, it just went away naturally. You're all shaken up and you just wait for the snow globe to finally slow down, and in the meantime just laugh and not take it seriously. So your white space, you'll have more shitty thoughts, great, but then you'll also have the opportunity just to get relaxed with them, because it's I forget, there's a quote about like that a lot of people that a mark of sanity is to be able to sit in a room alone with your thoughts and not be scared of them. It's that thing of a lot of people work a lot and keep their minds busy because they don't like hearing negative thoughts, but life's a contact sport. Unfortunately, while you're alive, you're going to have shit thoughts. Okay, fine. The way out of it is just
building that mechanism to handle the self-doubts and to know what to do when they do come, and actually not to fear them because that they're natural. And I think that's a big thing for many people listening, is that I guess they and we're no different, right? You hear those things, or your mind tells you those things, and suddenly you create this false reality of, then that might happen, and that might happen, and that might happen, and before you know it, you've wasted stacks of energy and time thinking about a situation that doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's called catastrophizing. That's what they call it in CBT. And it's a natural, it's a survival mechanism. It's really useful. It keeps you alive, right? It's really good, but it's not particularly helpful for most things. But I think rather than a mechanism, like the thing that all the reading I've done, the thing that seems to work best for me at least, is just being lighthearted about it. So just catch yourself and go, oh, here I go again. Just laugh at the stupidity, and the emotion's still there. It's not like it turns it off, but it begins to fade because you just don't play with it. You don't get on that train of thought. But it doesn't always work. Sometimes you just get caught on that train of thought and you keep going, and it compounds and you're in a shit mood. And then again, the only way out is just to realize it and go, okay, I'm going to be in a crap mood for a few hours, I'm having a shitty thinking day, and then try to not take it out on anyone else because it's not their problem, even though it feels like it.
Just one thing I am keen to explore before the end of today's session was just around flywheels. We've talked a little bit about these before, and actually, if I am having white space to think about ideas and bring them into the business, I guess I just want to make sure that the way I'm bringing them in is as sustainable as possible. And so was keen to just pick your brains around flywheels. And I think it was an Amazon book you sent me, and you talked about the flywheels that they created, and maybe you can just share some context on that again.
Of course. So you've heard of Jim Collins, who wrote Good to Great. Good to Great, yeah. So Jim Collins, he's the guy that came up with the flywheel. Okay. So Jeff Bezos in, I think, 99. Amazon wasn't amazing in 99. Amazon lost money, I think, until 2006. And the shareholders would just go nuts and say, this is a fucking charity. You're making everything so cheap. All you do is worship your customers, you idiots, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, Bezos obviously didn't listen and was right. But he got Jim Collins in to help them to kind of say, how can we build something that will be phenomenal? And Collins introduced them to the concept of the flywheel. And I think I sent you the Amazon flywheel, which very much says, if we sell the cheapest products and have the best customer service, then we get more traffic, which means we can get more sellers on our platform, which means we can lower prices and so on. And it basically, so the book is called Turning the Flywheel by Jim Collins. Highly recommended, but it's basically just feedback loops. But what you do in your business is you get feedback and you plug it in. So let me give you an example of our sales flywheel at the minute, which has been set up recently. So we have a sales process, a perfect pitch checklist that we put, which is the combination of all of the IP from all of our wins and losses and all of our best sales training and everything, and pitch process for the last 12 years. Great. So we run through that process. So that's stage one, is we run through the process. We get the pitch. We run through the process. We then do the pitch, and then afterwards we get feedback, win or lose, doesn't matter, because we need feedback regardless. Because sometimes the best feedback's when you win, actually. So we get feedback from the team and then from the client, and then that gets put back into the perfect pitch process. So we change our process, our tick box. And then we also get someone to sit on the next pitch who to go through it to make sure that the new things are taken on board. So basically, every time we have a pitch and we communicate with the external world, win or lose, we're getting feedback, and then that feeds into the following processes, and it just compounds, and we just make changes accordingly.
What about if those processes don't see the external world? So more of an internal process where I guess the feedback would just come from the team, right, as opposed to the client.
Yeah, either from the team or from metrics that you use to measure outputs that the processes are supposed to do. So it doesn't really matter where you get. The whole point of the feedback loop is it has to change process, which means changes the outcome. Because often what happens is we get feedback and then we moan that someone's not done a very good job and blah blah blah, and then nothing happens. That's it. And we get feedback and we whinge, and then we say, oh, we should really change that, or that person needs training, or whatever. I mean, the drawback of it is you can get really in your head with processes. That's why I prefer checklists rather than processes. The checklists are, tick as many of these as possible, and then that's a measurement tool. If we do 90% of our checklist, do we win more pitches than when we do 60? Are there some elements on there that are more important? Like that, that's a piece for analysis as well. But yeah, it's essential. I mean, there's flywheels for the whole business. I think the flywheel for the whole business is, I can't remember it now. It's something along the lines that if we get the client maximum return on investment and outstanding customer service, they buy more from us, which then allows us to create more case studies and enter rewards and so on, which means that we get an NPS score of 10. NPS score of 10 means that we ask for referrals. Referrals means we get more clients, and then we win those clients. And then obviously that's, maximum ROI, best customer service, grow the accounts, testimonials, NPS, referral. Do you see what I mean? It goes around like that. So it's good. It's a good way of just making sure that you're creating positive feedback loops. And the insight I had thinking about it, which is quite obvious when I say it, but I hadn't realized that, is that the two sort of main mental models I use are the 80-20, the exponential curve, right, Pareto's law, and the feedback loop. And I realized that Pareto, like you see Pareto curves, they are created because of feedback loops. I hadn't realized that, but of course they are. They tie into each other, right? Amazon is, one of the biggest companies in the world because it has a feedback, because it has a flywheel, a feedback loop in it. There are lots of e-commerce websites that are tiny because they don't have feedback loops, so they don't grow.
I guess that's the big thing as well, is just not only helping the agency to create the flywheel loops, but then making sure that, I guess I'm interested to hear your side in terms of kind of trying to educate an audience or a customers on this, because part of me is like, actually, you're right. There's loads of e-commerce sites that don't have feedback loops. Maybe we need to help them create them. But then part of me is like, actually, that's not part of the proposition, and that's part of somebody else's offering, and maybe we don't need to go down that route.
No, I mean, obviously it's feedback that we use in digital marketing for that part of the campaign, but it's probably more with James Davey when he was doing his consultancy stuff. Thing, rather than I mean, look, you're like me, you want to create something new, a new proposition. But I think, look, with website, you want user testing and so on for feedback. So you can create feedback loops within it. But an Amazon flywheel for another e-com, I don't know. That can be a future baby for you, Mr. Lomax, once you've mastered flywheels, perhaps, and you love them.
Maybe. I think the big thing is to just focus internally for now on the flywheels we can develop within the business. And we started these
Yeah.
feedback sessions with all the team, but I think that they could just be a little bit more focused around a set challenge. I think the thing is when everyone from all the different walks of the business come into a room and give their feedback on the last 2 weeks and what's worked well and what hasn't worked well, actually then you get an opportunity where people are just, yeah, there's so much information that actually you can't then necessarily go and implement or action all of it. So I guess it's how do we then settle on a topic to say, okay, we've got consensus that this is the thing we're going to try and improve first. Now let's go and solve it, and then we'll come back to the table. And maybe the first session is to get them all down and prioritize them or something. I'm not too sure, but again, that comes with time as well, right? Actually, now you've got more white space, you can start to have those sessions. You can think about it. You can then go and put some measures in place to see if it's working or not.
There's a really good book on that, which I don't have to hand, so I failed.
Oh, come on. Come on.
I don't have it to hand. I've got it's called Fix This Next. So it's a really good mental model. It's got like a really good hierarchy of how you prioritize things to fix with feedback. It's by it's by the guy that wrote Profit First, Mike Mouchowitz, I think. But yeah, if you type in Fix This Next, Profit First is a good thing to read, but yeah, I give it to accounting people and FDs, and they're like, "This is back to front. We don't like it." It's like, "Oh, I like it." There you go.
I mean, it's interesting. We're just one of the KPI. We were looking at KPIs for the business and maybe creating a dashboard or something like that. And we thought, what's the one KPI we should all focus on? And yeah, it is around client retention and client happiness and all that good stuff. But actually, profit. And I don't think we should be afraid to say that, because many people go into business to make profit, and actually before long they seem to do everything else apart from make profit. And so it's like, how do we pull it back to its core discipline of, okay, what is profitability, and how do we make sure that we're achieving it while hitting other metrics?
Have you read Profit First?
No, Profit First.
Get that. That's a good Audible book, actually. Get that on audio. So yeah, Profit First, and his other one is Fix This Next. He's a really switched on entrepreneur in America. It's Mike Mouchowitz. But yeah, Profit First you'll love it, and then you'll take it to Pete and he'll roll his eyes. So
he'll be like, you've been speaking to Marcus again. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it messes with accounting, but it's absolutely right. Like the premise is really simple. It's, say you sell like a website for 10 grand.
Yeah.
And you go, I want 20% profit on this. You take the profit out first. So you take like 2 grand out, and you put you lock it in another account, and then the rest of the money, that's all you've got to spend on servicing it.
Yeah, got you.
And you just don't mess with that. But accountants hate it because it's accounting back to front. Profit should be what's left over. But when you do it like that, what's left over it gets eaten up very quickly with lots of cool ideas. Whereas if you've got your money hidden away in a Profit First account, you become a really profitable business. So I think it's a good idea. But I've yet to convince Gareth and Pete on it. Although in fact, I haven't worked very hard, other than just mentioning it to Pete in passing and buying Gareth the book, which I don't think he's had time to read. So, I would take ownership that I haven't actually sold it in. It's like you and Nemo with that spreadsheet. I've just thrown something at them and hope for the best, which has got a low probability of success.
Yeah. Mate, unfortunately, we're coming to the end of today's session. I see that Tracy Aldous has just left a comment saying there is always a positive to a negative. Negative thoughts can be positive. It's learning how to both embrace them and how to compartmentalize them. Thoughtful discussion. And just while Tracy's there, just a massive thank you to her for all the help she's been giving Nemo through her college and everything else. I know she's really enjoying it and she's doing fantastically well. So thank you, Tracy, and I hope you've enjoyed today's conversation. But mate, as always, it's a huge pleasure, and it's so nice to kind of be in this position where actually we're not worrying about, okay, previously maybe when we started these, we'd have that hour and I'm like, crumbs, now I've got to go and check my email and make sure everything's okay, and there's 55 Slack messages and what I'm going to do. And it's a really weird feeling when there's not loads of notifications coming in and there's not all this kind of noise. It's a nice position to be in, and one that I shall cherish.
Good. Well, I think the initial goal was to get you back to peak Lomax, not to be a rare anomaly that you have these moments. So let's make that more frequent. And then I think the second goal was for you to spread that and be able to get your whole team in that place so they're flourishing. Because there's no point in you flourishing and everyone else being stressed. So that's the next thing. But I mean,
Flywheels and some of the conversation today will certainly help. And I guess it's just about not trying to get all the team to be peak team tomorrow, but at the same time, we can take each of them and drop them up a few, well, raise them up a few percentages, and actually, yeah, just support them as much as we can. Exciting times.
It is, mate. Well, look forward to catching up. Let's catch up, perhaps not on a live as well in between. But
it'll be good to chat. I'm really keen. Last thing, just to hear about the Million Tree Pledge, or the kind of what's going on with that.
Yeah, it's so we got 20 pledges. So we launched it properly on Earth Day, which was the 22nd of April.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, it's Million Tree Pledge is a group of people getting together to face the climate emergency with bold and big action by pledging to plant 1 million trees, which is going way beyond their carbon footprint. We launched it, 3 weeks ago. So we've had 20 businesses sign up. So it's 20 million trees pledged, of which 1.35 million have been planted already. So that's not bad.
Superb.
Yeah, and Mr. Pickles, David Pickles from Symbiotic, is having some very high-level conversations. One which may even get 1 billion trees pledged in the next week or so. So it's kind of gone from an idea from my bed when I had COVID to now becoming something wonderful, which is just amazing. But it's all down to people that have come together. I
encourage anyone that is listening that's keen to find out more about the Million Tree Pledge to reach out to Marcus and to hear all about it. It's a fantastic cause, and I love the little shout out for Mr. Pickles. He's a wonderful guy, and who he doesn't know doesn't seem to be worth knowing. So I'm glad to hear he's opening some doors there too.
Yeah, brilliant. All right, mate. Take care. Have a great day.
Lovely to see you, mate. Take care. See you soon.
Yes, bye.
Bye.